Jupiter's Legacy from the world of Mark Millar, which by the way, this will be a good time for me to mention that I had no idea that this was based off a comic book series, so I've never read the comic books. As a matter of fact, when I went to press play on this was all because of JVS, my buddy Sam. Literally, when I pressed play on this show, I had never seen a teaser trailer, I'd never seen a trailer. Maybe I've seen the posters, if even that. So I went into this show cold, and I'm so glad that I went coldly into this show, blindly into this show, because I went back and I watched the trailer for season 1, and I was like, oh my god, what is going on with the fucking trailers in today's time? I am so glad I did not watch the trailer to this show, because it ruined crucial moments, in my personal opinion. So if you're thinking about watching this show, I would highly recommend avoiding the trailers. Jupiter's Legacy. I want you to imagine a dark, gritty, violent series that kind of feels a bit influenced by Frank Miller, but I want you to imagine a series like that, okay? Now I want you to imagine this same series is like a rated R superhero show for adults. Imagine the Wachowskis' Cloud Atlas, and then imagine Vanilla Sky all crunched into each other and had a baby, and Jupiter's Legacy was the baby. From a storytelling perspective, that's exactly what this show is like. So, however you felt about these two movies, you're probably going to feel very similar towards this show. First off, the makeup, the wigs, basically all of the fake hair is meme worthy, and not in a good way. It's like hilariously bad, okay? Literally, Josh Duhamel's character, what the fuck is his character name? Okay, so like Sheldon, played by Josh Duhamel, has the worst hair game I think I've ever seen for a main character of a series or a film. I'm not even joking. Literally, the wigs, the fake beards, and the horrible aging makeup that's on him and Walter. Oh yeah, the makeup for Walter and Sheldon are especially bad. Sheldon, Josh Duhamel, Sheldon literally looks like if you took He-Man, Goku, and mostly Santa Claus, and just smashed them together. and they had a baby, that talks like Heath Ledger from Brokeback Mountain. That's exactly what this character is like. Every time Sheldon talks, he's like, yeah, and it's cold dark in the woods, but there might be gay men out in the woods. So this show is kind of like two shows at once. On one side, we have the present day events, and on the other side, we have this like 1920s, 1930s timeline. It's like a flashback with the character Sheldon. And both of these narratives throughout the show are running parallel with each other. And I'm not going to lie to you, that aspect is actually really, really awesome. The whole show doesn't really make much fucking sense. Like, I guess that's to say that the show, surprisingly, is really confusing. There's something about this show where it almost feels like it feels like a superhero drama for adults, but at the same time it kind of feels like one big long form confusing surreal piece of work from David Lynch. It almost feels like David Lynch's distant cousin made this series, and it's bloody, there's gore, there's sex, there's suicide, significant, very, very important suicide. There's drug use. So yeah, if you were a buddy of mine, he asked me, is this a comedy series? And I was like, no. Sheldon and Walter are probably my favorite characters. Definitely Sheldon is my favorite character. Like, first off, I love the whole flashback narrative in the 1920s with Sheldon, it is so compelling. It is so gripping to me. Weirdly, it has a lot in common with the storytelling that could be found in in Peter Jackson's King Kong. You could also make some comparisons to like Brendan Fraser's The Mummy. There's actually a few times where Josh Duhamel kinda sorta looks like from a physicality standpoint and a costume standpoint. There's a few times where Josh Duhamel dead ass looks like Brendan Fraser. And personally, I love the sense of adventure that's being told through this flashback. You know what I'm saying? I love how abstract the storytelling is, and I love how many questions are left with us through this flashback. We even get to learn how everyone got their powers through these 1920s flashbacks. So there's some very rich, adventure-infused storytelling going on with these flashbacks that I genuinely was gripped by and just loved. I just ate it up. Also, there's a moment in episode 4, I believe. I think it's in episode 4. Basically, the moment... First off, this is a very bingeable series. I think I literally watched all 8 episodes, I think in a day's time. As soon as I started watching it, it was like a bag of chips that I couldn't stop eating. And when this actor arrives, this is when the show became something that I was like, okay, I broke in. I'm finally on board. Like, everything prior to this, I was like, I'm not sure what to think of this show. This show is so strange and out there. I'm not really sure what the fuck to think of it. But by the time this actor showed up, I was like, you know what? This show, it sank its hooks into me, and I'm interested. Because when he shows up, he begins to tell this story. And this entire moment that I'm describing is my favorite moment in the entire show. It is such a brilliant example of the power of storytelling. I was so thought-provoked. I was so glued. I was so at the edge of my seat listening to this man tell this story. Just the music, the cinematography, the sound effects, it was just so perfect. Was it Kurtwood Smith? His acting was A1. I'm talking like 10 out of 10. Okay? When he came into the scene, I was like, the nigga from That 70s Show, really? And he killed it. He killed it. He was so utterly convincing. The story that he was telling literally sent chills down my spine, the way that he was articulating it, you know, emotionally. But yeah, I found the 1920s segments just so creatively inspiring and just so out there. Like Josh Duhamel, Sheldon, he encounters like supernatural forces. And like I'm still not entirely sure what the fuck happened. In terms of the overall score and soundtrack for this series, I kind of wish it stood out more. I kind of wish the music in general stood out more. Oddly, this is both a positive and a negative, but I love that the overall narrative has such dense layers for each and every single character. Like, every character is overstuffed with details when it comes to character biographies or character backstory. Almost like too much time spent on analyzing these characters individually. This family. These characters are so detailed that honestly I feel like I could ace an essay description for each of these family members. Like, let me see here. Chloe Sampson, oh my god. Chloe annoys the fuck out of me. It's like drug addict, like angsty teenager that's just too angsty for her own good. her life is just like Adam Sandler's life in Uncut Gems. Grace Sampson, she's interesting. Grace, I love that Grace is so dominant. She's such an independent thinker, you know. I love that Grace is constantly questioning everything, particularly the overall rule set that's been created for the family from Sheldon. George and Walter are kind of interchangeable, but George, he's kind of like Sheldon's right hand man, or like he's kind of like Sheldon's wingman. George kind of reminds me of this character from Better Call Saul. He kind of just reminds me of that character. Walter, fucking Walter. Walter kind of reminds me of, like a 1920s aggressive, sometimes kind of creepy spin on Professor Xavier from X-Men. Brandon Sampson. Brandon Sampson, dead ass. Brandon Sampson reminds me of Gohan from Dragon Ball Z. Remember when Gohan was just a little bitch, right? And he was always complaining like a fucking infant, right? Always crying and shit, and Piccolo was trying to train him. There's definitely some plot twists that made me go, wait, what? And again, it took about 4 episodes for the show to make me be like, you know what? I'm really enjoying what I'm watching. So yeah, mileage may vary. But yeah, for me, the overall story it's very mythic in tone, and the lore is shockingly abstract, deep, and dense in terms of its intricacies. Honestly, this show it's kind of like a rated R The Incredibles, except like the dad is like seeing things, kind of like Dennis Leary off of Rescue Me, and he's got some serious daddy issues, and the mother constantly questioning her morals and the morals of the family and her reality, and the kids are just strung out on sex, drugs, and murder. The overall narrative, the overall story, instead of a story, it kind of feels like one big Rubik's Cube that I'm desperately trying to unlock because it's just so interesting and different. And I had so much fun trying to unlock it, honestly. The final twist in the show is a fucking doozy. It works. It's worthy. It makes sense, but it's kind of, by the time it arrives, and particularly in the way that it's articulated to you, it's a bit overkill. In fact, everything about this show is pretty much overkill. To put it to you a different way, this show, it's kind of like asking for a single scoop of ice cream, and the show arrives with a dump truck filled with ice cream. It's a great feast, but the cook brought way too much to the table. But despite the flaws, I don't know. I feel like the critics are being way too harsh. They're being way too harsh. Okay, I binged this without a problem in like a day and a half's time. Okay, I really enjoyed it. Personally, for me, it's I'm gonna go with an 8. I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10. Yes, it's flawed as fuck. Okay, a lot of the problems that Jupiter Ascending has, or like a lot of problems that Cloud Atlas has, this series shares a lot of those similar problems. The main action sequence, the main battle with Black Star in this show, in hindsight, is actually pretty fucking bonkers. Unfortunately, the seams of this show are blatantly apparent. It's very, very obvious that they were working with a low budget. For example, when they're flying around fighting each other, it's so obvious that wire work is going on. Like I said before, the hair and makeup are pretty bad. For some reason, I like the personality of Black Star. I like the way that he represents himself. But at the same time, there's some cringy moments with Black Star, and there's something about the makeup that just takes me out of the show. I'm not sure what it is, but there's something visually about Black Star that doesn't work. I think it's because Black Star reminds me of just some throwaway character from like a really awful CW superhero TV show. The character bios are stacked with detail, and the story is so hypnotically unorthodox and weirdly philosophically deep. Despite obvious flaws, my fingers are crossed tightly for season 2. I think it deserves another season to determine whether this has been one big waste of time or this has been one big slow burn to something even more wild, psychedelic, and just out there. All of the performances are pretty good. Josh Duhamel is probably the standout for sure. Yeah, I think it deserves another chance. Again, I'm feeling an 8 out of 10. Shockingly, I had a blast with this show. It's just so, especially for the genre of superheroes, there's just something so uniquely distinctive and just truly different about this superhero family drama. But yeah, that's basically all of my thoughts on season 1 of Jupiter's Legacy. What did you think about this show? Definitely let me know down below, because this thing was it was different.